Have you ever wondered why, no matter how much the world changes, fear always seems to find a way to sneak back into our lives? Wars end, economies recover, societies adapt, and yet, in every generation, new challenges rise like shadows, wearing different faces but carrying the same weight. Political turmoil, sudden economic collapse, global uncertainty. Each event shakes us, making us question if we're truly safe, if tomorrow can really be trusted. Has this ever happened to you? That moment when the news flashes across the screen, or a rumor spreads, and suddenly your chest tightens, your mind races, and it feels as if the ground beneath your feet is no longer steady. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you are watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. The truth is, fear isn't just a modern problem, it's as old as humanity itself. Our ancestors faced their own storms, invasions, plagues, famines. And though the forms were different, the core emotion was the same, that creeping sense of uncertainty, whispering that we might be alone, that perhaps God's presence isn't as close as we thought. And here lies the ancient temptation, one that has echoed across centuries, to doubt that there is a divine hand guiding, protecting, and sustaining us, even when the world feels like it's falling apart. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself overwhelmed by a crisis, whether personal or global, and wondered if you'd be able to make it through? It's in those moments that fear tries to convince us that we're powerless, that hope is fragile, and that the future is just a roll of the dice. But what if the opposite were true? What if the storms that shake our lives aren't proof of abandonment, but invitations to discover a deeper truth, a truth that fear desperately wants us to forget? History is full of stories where, in the darkest hours, something extraordinary happens. Not always in the form of instant rescue or miraculous escape, but in a shift of the heart, a quiet, steady light that appears when everything else seems lost. This light doesn't come from the world, it comes from within, from the awareness that divine presence has never left us, even when our senses scream otherwise. What you're about to discover might surprise you. Fear is not just an enemy to be fought. It's a signal, a doorway, pointing toward a place where unshakable faith can be born. Stay with me until the end, because as we move deeper into this journey, we'll explore how every generation's crises, whether wars, economic collapses, or personal tragedies, have always carried the same hidden challenge. Will we let fear dictate the shape of our future, or will we choose to stand in the unchanging presence of God? Picture this. The year is 1942. The world is at war. In New York City, blackouts turn the night into an ocean of darkness, not for romance, but for survival. Many fear that each flicker of shadow could be the prelude to disaster. And yet, in a small prayer room on 57th Street, a group gathers, not in panic, but in quiet strength. As the lights go out, they repeat, over and over, "Divine love governs all." In that moment, the darkness outside becomes irrelevant, because a different light has been lit within them. This is the kind of shift we're going to uncover together, a transformation that doesn't depend on circumstances changing first, but on something far more powerful, the realization that crises don't have to control us. And as we move forward, you'll see how this understanding can be the foundation not only for surviving the storms of life, but for walking through them with a peace the world can't explain. And in just a moment, we'll step right into the heart of how this truth unfolds. In that dimly lit room of 1942, when the city outside was swallowed by silence and shadow, something remarkable unfolded. There were no trembling hands, no frantic whispers of worst-case scenarios. Instead, voices moved in unison, steady and deliberate, repeating the same simple phrase, "Divine love governs all." It wasn't a desperate chant, but a declaration, a conscious choice to fill the atmosphere with certainty rather than fear. In that instant, the blackout stopped being a symbol of threat and became a sanctuary, a space where the unseen was more real than the darkness itself. Moments like these reveal a hidden truth about the human spirit. We often imagine that peace is a byproduct of calm circumstances, but in reality, it's the other way around. Peace can be cultivated first, even in the midst of chaos, and from that state of inner stillness, the outer world begins to shift. It's the transformation that happens when we refuse to feed fear with our focus, and instead direct our attention toward what is unshakable. This is where mindset becomes more than a buzzword. It's the architect of the life we live tomorrow. Because here's the thing. The future is not an independent force rushing toward us. It's a canvas waiting for the colors we choose today. Every thought, every belief, every quiet affirmation is a brushstroke. The choices we make in the present, how we react, where we place our faith, what truths we decide to anchor in, are not just personal coping mechanisms. They are the building blocks of the reality we will one day walk into. The world may call it optimism, but in essence, it's an act of creation. Think about how often we hand over that creative power without realizing it. We replay worst-case scenarios, letting them grow vivid and detailed, almost cinematic, until they feel inevitable. That is also a form of visualization, but one that works against us. And the irony is, the same mental energy used to fuel anxiety could be redirected to shape a completely different outcome. Behind the scenes of every great breakthrough, whether in personal life or on the global stage, lies the same pattern. Someone chose to see what wasn't yet visible and hold that vision with unwavering focus. It's not about ignoring reality or pretending challenges don't exist. It's about understanding that our perception is the gateway through which reality takes form. A storm may rage outside, but if the inner space remains centered, that steadiness will eventually ripple outward. And just like those men and women in 1942, we can decide, moment by moment, to fill that space with truth instead of fear. We can choose the narrative we project forward, not with hollow positivity, but with deliberate conviction. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what happens when you align your present thought with a higher truth is far more profound than simply feeling better. It initiates a shift that rewrites your decisions, alters the energy you bring into every interaction, and changes how the world responds to you. It's the starting point of a journey where fear loses its grip, not because circumstances become perfect, but because you've claimed your role as the one who shapes the unseen into the tangible. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." When the world outside is shaking, it's easy to believe that stability will only return once circumstances calm down. But here's the hidden truth. Peace doesn't wait for the storm to pass. It's planted long before, in the soil of our thoughts, and it grows strongest in seasons of uncertainty. A mind rooted in trust is like a compass that stays fixed even when the winds change direction. It doesn't deny that chaos exists, but it refuses to let chaos dictate the path ahead. And in that refusal, something powerful happens. The scattered pieces of life start to fall into place, not by accident, but because order responds to the vibration of faith. Faith-filled thinking is not wishful thinking. It's a decision, a conscious act of aligning with what is unshakable, even when everything visible seems temporary or unstable. It's like standing on a bridge in the middle of a raging river, knowing the water beneath may be wild, but the structure holding you is solid. This mindset has an impact far beyond emotional comfort. It rearranges the very way events unfold. It opens doors that fear would have kept closed, attracts opportunities that panic would have driven away, and clears the mental fog that distorts good decisions. In moments of upheaval, the temptation is always to adapt our inner state to match the noise of the world. Yet, that's when the journey inward becomes most essential, because no matter how unpredictable the horizon may appear, there is a constant, a foundation that doesn't erode with time or circumstance. That foundation is the certainty that divine order is not dependent on human stability, that the source of security is not the market, the headlines, or the approval of others. There's a quiet strength that rises when you remember this. You stop scanning the distance for signs of safety and begin to realize safety was never out there to begin with. It's within, anchored in the truth that the same presence guiding you today will guide you tomorrow, no matter what tomorrow looks like. And when you live from that awareness, your actions change. You make choices from clarity instead of panic. You respond rather than react. and your energy shifts in ways that subtly influence the people and situations around you. Think of it like walking through a crowded street in the middle of a sudden downpour. Some rush for cover, others freeze in indecision, but you keep moving forward steadily, not because you have an umbrella big enough to control the weather, but because you know where you're headed and trust the ground beneath your feet. That steadiness becomes its own form of shelter, and before long, others notice and are drawn to it. This is the quiet, behind-the-scenes influence of living in truth. It doesn't shout, but it transforms everything it touches. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the shift from fear to trust is more than a mental adjustment. It's a complete reorientation of how you see the world and your place in it. It's the point where uncertainty stops being an enemy and starts becoming the stage where your inner stability proves its strength. And the more you anchor yourself in this awareness, the more you'll see that external chaos can't unsettle what is truly secure. Put down, I'm also on this path. We spend so much of our lives leaning forward into a future we can't see, convinced that our happiness is waiting somewhere ahead of us. When the job comes, when the relationship arrives, when the situation changes. But the truth, the kind that reshapes everything once you really feel it, is that life doesn't happen in someday. It happens here, now, in the quiet space between one breath and the next. The present is the only place where peace can be found, because it's the only place where you actually exist. Everything else is either memory or imagination. The challenge is that our minds are rarely still enough to stay here. We project ourselves forward into scenarios that haven't happened yet, rehearsing what could go wrong as if preparing for disaster will somehow protect us from it. But that's the hidden trap. Every fearful thought we entertain about the future is a seed planted in the soil of the present. And the universe, like a perfectly honest gardener, will always give back the fruit of what we plant, whether we intended it or not. This is where mindset becomes not just important, but decisive. If your mental energy is consumed by worry, you're shaping your tomorrow in the same mold as your fear today. And the reverse is also true. When you choose to fill your mind with images of stability, abundance, and trust, you're laying the groundwork for those very things to take form. It's not magic, it's alignment. The outer world will always echo the patterns of the inner one. Think of it like tuning an instrument. If the string is tightened in anxiety, the note will sound strained and discordant, no matter how skillfully it's played. But if it's set in the right tension, calm, balanced, and intentional, it produces a tone that resonates beautifully. Your thoughts work the same way. They set the frequency you'll carry into every decision, every conversation, every opportunity that comes your way. And that frequency is what draws matching experiences back to you. We often underestimate just how much power we hold in these small, present moment choices. Choosing peace right now, in the face of uncertainty, is not passive. It's a bold act of creation. It's telling life, this is the quality I want my future to carry, and then embodying it before the evidence arrives. Behind the scenes, that decision shifts your emotional posture, changes the way people respond to you, and opens doors that anxious energy would have kept shut. Of course, the pull of the future is strong. There's a part of us conditioned to believe that constant planning and predicting is a sign of responsibility. But there's a vast difference between wise preparation and fear-fueled projection. One is grounded in clarity. The other is an endless loop that drains your strength before you even take the first step. When you break that loop, when you anchor yourself fully in the present, you're not ignoring the future. You're shaping it with precision. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you truly understand that every thought is a seed, you stop letting random fears plant themselves in your mind. You become deliberate about the inner garden you're cultivating, knowing that what you nurture here and now will become the landscape you walk through later. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." In the divine perspective, there is no ticking clock, no countdown to a better day somewhere out there. There is only the eternal now, a space untouched by the wear of time, where every possibility already exists in its purest form. Past and future, as we experience them, are constructs of the mind, useful for organizing our human journey but powerless in the realm of spirit. And yet, most of us live as if the present were just a waiting room, something to endure until the real moment arrives. That's the illusion that keeps fear alive, because fear thrives in the gap between now and later. We tell ourselves that when things settle down, we'll finally find peace. When the opportunity appears, we'll finally step into purpose. But the hidden truth is that later never comes in the way we expect, because the only moment that truly exists is this one. All transformation begins here, not in some imagined version of the future. This instant, the one you're living right now, is the only point of power you will ever have. It's in this sacred instant that the shift happens. The moment you become aware of God within you, the narrative changes. You're no longer moving through life as a passenger waiting for conditions to improve. You're the one shaping the atmosphere from the inside out. This isn't about trying to manipulate circumstances, but about aligning with the unchanging presence that exists beneath them. When that alignment occurs, fear has nothing to cling to. It loses its grip because it cannot exist in the same space as full awareness of divine reality. Think about the times in your life when everything seemed uncertain, yet there was a flash, a breath, where you suddenly felt centered, even without any external reason. That is what it means to step out of the illusion of later and into the reality of now. In that space, clarity comes without effort. Decisions feel guided rather than forced, and you realize that the stability you've been searching for was never conditional on the world's approval or timing. The journey to living this way is less about adding something new and more about letting go of the constant deferral of your own peace. It's choosing to stop postponing your connection to what's real. The mind, trained for years to anticipate and analyze, resists this at first. It will tell you that preparation for tomorrow is safer than full presence today. But behind the scenes, every moment you spend in the later illusion is a moment forfeited from creating the kind of life you actually want to live. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you start to truly inhabit the eternal now, you begin to see how much of your energy has been tied up in mental projections that never had any power over you. You start to notice how fear dissolves when it has no future to feed on, and how the awareness of God within you transforms not just your inner world, but the very fabric of your reality. Put down, "I'm also on this path." Real change never begins where most people expect. We think if we can just rearrange the circumstances, if we can adjust the pieces of the puzzle out there in the world, then the inner discomfort will fade. But it's the opposite. The outer scene is only the reflection of the inner one, and until consciousness itself shifts, the view remains the same, no matter how many times we repaint it. This is why transformation can feel like such a mystery from the outside, because the real work happens behind the scenes, in the quiet space of awareness where no one else is looking. When your awareness aligns with divine truth, the whole framework of your reality begins to reorganize itself, often in ways you could never have planned. What once looked like an immovable obstacle suddenly becomes irrelevant, not because the mountain moved first, but because your perspective did. It's like turning a lens until the blur sharpens into perfect clarity. The terrain hasn't changed, but now you can see the path that was hidden all along. One of the most powerful tools for initiating this shift is deceptively simple, yet its impact can be profound. It's the practice often called the golden key, replacing the thought of the problem with the thought of God. In a world trained to dissect problems from every angle, this feels almost counterintuitive. But when you deliberately take your attention off the disaster scenario and place it on the presence of God, you're not ignoring reality, you're engaging with a deeper one. You're stepping out of the frequency of fear and into the frequency of truth. The brilliance of this practice is that it doesn't require you to fully understand how it works. You don't have to argue with your mind or convince yourself through logic. You simply repeat God with steady intention, allowing the word to become more than a sound, letting it anchor you in something unshakable. With each repetition, the frantic images lose their grip. The mental loops that fuel anxiety begin to dissolve, not through force, but through the quiet dominance of truth over illusion. This is not a mechanical exercise. It's a conscious decision to change. the point of contact between your mind and the world. Every time you shift your focus like this, you're building a new pattern, one where fear no longer dictates your decisions. Over time, this becomes less of a technique and more of a way of living, your default response to uncertainty. And the more you live from that place, the more naturally circumstances start to align with peace instead of chaos. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you start replacing problem thoughts with God, you're not just calming your mind. You're reprogramming the foundation from which your life unfolds. You're training your inner world to recognize truth before illusion has a chance to take root. And that choice has a ripple effect far beyond the moment you make it. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Everything you have ever truly experienced, every surge of fear, every spark of love, every pivotal decision, has happened in the present moment. It's the only arena where life is actually lived, yet it's the one place we're trained to overlook. We drift into memories, replaying old wounds, or we project ourselves into futures that haven't happened. And in doing so, we miss the power that is available right now. The present is more than a fleeting instant on the clock. It's the meeting ground between you and the divine, the place where transformation begins and the trajectory of your life quietly shifts. When you learn to anchor yourself here, something remarkable happens. Outer events, no matter how loud or chaotic, lose their ability to dictate your inner state. Anchored in God, you find a stillness that isn't dependent on perfect conditions. The storm can roar, the headlines can scream, but the center of your being remains unshaken. That steadiness isn't passivity, it's power. It's the kind of power that subtly but surely influences everything around you, because you're no longer reacting to the world's turbulence. You're acting from a place of inner authority. It's in this space of contact with truth that the hidden work takes place, the work that can't be seen from the outside but changes everything behind the scenes. The decisions you make from here are different. They're not born of urgency or fear, but of clarity. And clarity has a magnetic quality. It draws in the right people, opportunities, and resources, not through force or manipulation, but through the natural alignment of thought, intention, and action. This doesn't mean you'll never feel the pull of fear again. It means fear will no longer be the voice that gets the final say. When you are centered in the now, fear becomes a passing wave rather than a defining current. You might feel its spray, but it can't carry you away. That's because the truth you're anchored to runs deeper than any passing emotion. It's not something you convince yourself of. It's something you experience directly, a knowing that all is held within a greater order, even if your senses can't yet see it. And there's a hidden ripple effect to this way of living. Your presence itself becomes a quiet refuge for others. People sense it, even if they can't name it. They notice that in your company, they feel a little calmer, a little clearer, a little more able to breathe. That's the impact of someone who has made contact with truth and chosen to remain there. It's not about perfection. It's about returning over and over to that still point where God meets you in the present. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you understand how to live from this anchored state, you begin to see how your inner posture not only shapes your own journey, but also influences the environments and lives you touch. This is where the power of presence becomes a quiet revolution, one that starts within, but reaches far beyond you. Put down, "I'm also on this path." When you take the word God and let it settle into your mind like a steady heartbeat, you're doing far more than repeating a sound. Each time it passes through your lips or forms silently in your thoughts, it carves a new groove into the landscape of your consciousness. It's like a sculptor's chisel, shaping raw stone into something intentional and beautiful. Over time, the jagged edges of fear and doubt begin to smooth, replaced by the clear lines of truth. And this isn't about forcing yourself to believe. It's about allowing the repetition to do its quiet, transformative work until it becomes the natural rhythm of your inner world. This steady chiseling strips away the excess noise, the tangled narratives, and the borrowed beliefs you've carried without question. What remains is something solid and unshakable, not because you've built it from scratch, but because it was always there beneath the surface. The repetition doesn't create God's presence. it simply reveals it. And the more you practice, the more those brief flashes of clarity turn into a continuous awareness, a living sense that no matter what the surface of life looks like, the foundation underneath is unmovable. Knowing God in this way is nothing like memorizing facts or collecting inspiring quotes. It's not an intellectual exercise, it's a direct encounter. You feel it in the way your breathing slows, in the way your shoulders drop, in the way your mind stops chasing the next thought and simply rests. It's the recognition that all is well, not because the world has suddenly arranged itself according to your preferences, but because the presence you're anchored in transcends all of that. And when this awareness becomes your home, it changes how you move through the world. You stop needing constant reassurance from circumstances, because the reassurance is built into your state of being. Challenges still come, but they arrive like passing weather. You notice them, but they don't define your atmosphere. People may wonder how you remain composed, how you continue making grounded decisions when everything seems uncertain. And the answer is disarmingly simple. You're not navigating from the shifting map of appearances, but from the unchanging compass of presence. There's also an impact here that often goes unnoticed. This inner steadiness communicates without words. In conversations, in conflicts, in quiet moments with those you love, something about your energy tells others there's a deeper current they can trust. It's not about trying to teach them anything. It's about embodying something that speaks for itself. And little by little, your presence becomes an unspoken invitation for others to discover the same reality. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once the repetition of truth becomes second nature, and the awareness of God's presence is no longer momentary but constant, the way you relate to yourself, to others, and to life itself begins to shift in profound and unexpected ways. That's when the journey turns from seeking peace to living as its expression. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." There's a quiet discipline in pausing every hour, letting the noise of the day fade just enough to say God 3 times with full awareness. It might seem like such a small act, almost too simple to make an impact, yet this is the kind of behind-the-scenes practice that reshapes a life from the inside out. Each pause is like a reset button for the mind, interrupting the autopilot of distraction and worry, bringing you back to the center where clarity lives. Over time, this rhythm starts to weave itself into your day so naturally that you find yourself anchored even between the pauses. The outer flow of life remains the same. Emails still come in, conversations still happen, responsibilities still call, but something inside you is steady, grounded, untouched. And here's where the hidden truth emerges. You are not defined by occasional flashes of inspiration, but by the thoughts you sustain over time. A single spark can light the fire, but it's the steady tending that keeps it alive. What you return to again and again becomes the blueprint for your reality. If fear gets more attention than faith, then fear will quietly start constructing the environment around you. If resentment gets more airtime than gratitude, it will color the way you interpret every interaction. This isn't superstition, it's the way consciousness works. Your inner dialogue becomes the architect of your outer experience. When you start filling your mind with truth as a consistent practice, you're not just trying to feel better in the moment. You're training your mental and emotional energy to operate on a higher frequency, one that naturally draws in alignment, opportunity, and order. It's the transformation that happens when you stop letting random thoughts run the show, and instead choose, deliberately, which ones get to stay. And the remarkable part is that this choice is available at any moment, no matter where you are or what's happening around you. Think of it like tuning a musical instrument. Every time you pause to affirm truth, you're making a tiny adjustment, bringing yourself back into perfect pitch. At first, it feels conscious and deliberate, but soon it becomes second nature. You find yourself responding to life differently, not because the challenge has disappeared, but because your inner instrument is tuned to a different key. The sustained tone of your thoughts changes the atmosphere you carry, and that atmosphere begins to influence everything you touch. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand that your repeated thoughts are not just fleeting moments, but the very material out of which your future is built. You begin to see the profound responsibility and power you hold in deciding which ones you will nurture. Put down. I'm also on this path. The mind is an artist, and every image it holds with conviction becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of what's to come. When you fill that inner space with vivid pictures of ruin, lack, and defeat, you're unknowingly sketching outlines for a future you don't want. But when you dare to replace those images with scenes of harmony, provision, and success, you begin to alter the architecture of what's possible. It's not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to give them the starring role in the story you're telling yourself every day. Take the shop owner facing financial collapse. Every sign around him seemed to scream that failure was inevitable. Yet, instead of rehearsing the disaster in his mind, he committed to something radical. For a few minutes every single day, he pictured his store full of customers, shelves stocked with abundance, the sound of a register ringing, and the warm satisfaction of handing change back with a smile. He didn't know exactly how things would turn around, but that wasn't the point. He was reprogramming his inner stage, replacing the scene of ruin with one of flourishing, and slowly, the outer picture began to shift to match the one he had been cultivating inside. This is the hidden truth about attention. It is not passive. It is the sculptor's hand shaping tomorrow's reality. Focus is not just observation. It is creation. If your gaze lingers on scarcity, fear, and conflict, you are reinforcing the structure of those experiences. But when your attention rests on harmony, gratitude, and possibility, you are laying the groundwork for a different kind of outcome. The challenge is that life constantly tries to pull your eyes toward what's broken. The headlines, the conversations, the small frustrations of the day. Each one is a bid for your focus. That's why this work is less about trying to control the outer world and more about training your inner lens. You decide where to look. You decide what gets the privilege of your sustained thought. And that decision carries more weight than most people realize, because reality has a way of expanding in the direction of your gaze. Imagine your attention as sunlight. Whatever you shine it on begins to grow. Starve fear of that light, and it withers. Nourish trust, harmony, and abundance with it, and they take root in ways that surprise you. This isn't wishful thinking. It's the mechanics of how consciousness and creation dance together. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you understand how to hold these mental images with both intention and emotional truth, you'll see that you're not just influencing what happens. You're shaping the very foundation on which your life is built. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." There's a kind of sight that has nothing to do with your eyes. It's the vision that rises from deep within. The quiet knowing that can recognize truth, even when every outer sign points in the opposite direction. This is seeing with the soul's eyes, perceiving the essence of a thing before it has fully taken shape in the physical world. It's a skill the world rarely teaches, but it's one of the most powerful forms of awareness you can cultivate. Because when you begin to trust that inner sight more than the fleeting images your senses report, you free yourself from the tyranny of appearances. You stop being thrown back and forth by each wave of circumstance and start navigating by a compass that never fails. This kind of spiritual vision isn't about ignoring reality. It's about recognizing a deeper one. It's about knowing that harmony exists even when the noise is loud, that provision exists even when the numbers look small, that peace exists even when the winds are fierce. And here's where the shift happens. The more you choose to see with the soul's eyes, the more your outer world begins to align with what you've been perceiving inside all along. One way to strengthen this practice is deceptively simple. Before the day begins, write and affirm a clear, positive vision for it. Not just a vague hope, but a precise blueprint that you can return to whenever the outer story tries to pull you off course. You might declare, "This day unfolds in order and ease," or "Every interaction today is filled with mutual respect and clarity." The act of writing anchors it, and the act of affirming breathes life into it. You're not just setting intentions, you're programming the foundation your day will stand on. It's like giving the architect's plans to the builder before construction begins. Without them, the structure will rise according to random influences, whatever materials happen to be on hand, whatever shape the environment seems to suggest. But with a clear plan, every brick is placed with purpose. Your vision becomes the reference point, the quiet authority that shapes each moment. And what's fascinating is how quickly the outer begins to reflect the inner once you hold that blueprint firmly. It's not magic in the sense of bending the laws of nature. It's alignment. You are simply living from the inside out, instead of reacting from the outside in. And in that shift, you step into a place of creative authority over your experience. One decision, one thought, one vision at a time. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand how to merge spiritual sight with intentional creation, you'll see how this combination can completely redefine the way you move through life. Put down, I'm also on this path. True visualization is not an exercise in daydreaming or a retreat into wishful thinking. It's the disciplined act of holding a clear picture of what is already real in the realm of spirit, even before it has found its way into form. This is where so many misunderstand the practice. They think it's about creating something out of nothing, when in truth, it's about aligning with what already exists in divine reality, waiting for your acceptance to step into the visible world. When you visualize with this understanding, you're not trying to force events into place. You're simply opening the door for what's already yours to enter. The key lies in the precision of the mental image. Life doesn't respond to vague hopes or loosely held desires. It shapes itself according to the exact mold you provide. The mold is your sustained thought, your emotional agreement with that thought, and your refusal to keep remolding it with doubt. Think of it as giving the universe a blueprint and trusting it to work with perfect accuracy. If the blueprint is distorted, incomplete, or constantly altered, the result will be equally unstable. But when the image is clear and unwavering, reality has no choice but to conform to its shape. This is not about straining or obsessing over when and how the image will manifest. It's about knowing that the moment you hold that picture with deep conviction, the unseen processes of life begin moving toward it. You may not see anything shift immediately, but beneath the surface, the structure is taking form. This is why patience is not passive. It's the active state of keeping your vision intact, while the threads of reality weave themselves together. The transformation happens when you stop treating visualization as a performance for the mind and start treating it as communion with truth. You're not begging for something to arrive. You're agreeing with what already is. The more you visit that inner picture, the more familiar it becomes, until it feels more real than the so-called facts that once contradicted it. And when that happens, the outer world simply catches up. This is the hidden truth behind so many so-called miracles. They are not sudden gifts from an unpredictable universe. They are the natural result of a vision held faithfully, in alignment with what is eternally true. And once you understand that, you'll never look at the practice of shaping your inner world the same way again. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you grasp how to maintain this alignment without interference, you'll see how effortlessly the outer reality begins to mirror the inner one. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Every day the mind accepts images, whether you choose them or not. It's like a field that never stops growing something. If you don't plant what you want, the wind will blow in seeds you'd never have chosen. This is why replacing unhelpful self-images is not a once-in-a-while activity. It's a daily discipline. The moment you catch yourself seeing through a lens of limitation, you have the chance to exchange that picture for one aligned with the truth of who you are in spirit. It's not about ignoring flaws or pretending circumstances are different. It's about refusing to let old, unexamined beliefs dictate the shape of your life. When you deliberately plant an image of strength, abundance, or peace, you're not making it up. You're recalling the reality that already exists in God's vision of you. This act is more than positive thinking. It's a conscious agreement with your divine blueprint. Over time, these chosen images push out the weeds of fear and doubt, transforming not only how you think, but how you move, speak, and respond to life. And this transformation is not a forced effort. It's the natural outcome of tending your mental garden with care. What makes this process unstoppable is the divine law of progress. Change is not something we have to beg for. It's already built into the structure of life. Just as seasons turn and rivers carve new paths, the human soul is designed to expand into greater expressions of good. When a door closes, when plans shift, or when life pushes you into unfamiliar territory, it's rarely an ending. It's the next revelation of what's possible. The challenge is that the mind often clings to the familiar, even if it's limiting, because uncertainty feels like risk. But in truth, uncertainty is simply the space where new good has room to appear. Seeing change through this lens transforms how you meet it. Instead of resisting, you can greet it with curiosity, asking, "What hidden good is this unfolding?" That mindset turns what could have been a crisis into a crossing point, a passage from the known into the greater unknown that is actually full of promise. And when you train yourself to look for God's hand in every shift, you begin to see a pattern. Nothing is wasted, and even detours carry the seeds of your next breakthrough. This is not a passive surrender. It's an active trust that the current of life moves toward expansion, not contraction. It's believing that divine order is at work, even when the surface looks chaotic. And the more you anchor yourself in that belief, the more you notice opportunities, connections, and solutions that once would have slipped past you unnoticed. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because the way you respond to change, especially the unplanned kind, can determine whether it becomes a stepping stone or a stumbling block in your journey. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." When you begin to see God as the true author of progress, everything shifts. Progress stops being a random series of breakthroughs or a result of human ambition alone. It becomes a stream of divine intelligence expressing itself through inspired minds. Every great invention, every scientific discovery, every leap forward in understanding has its roots in a moment when someone became still enough to receive an idea that did not come from them, but through them. This is the hidden truth behind the world's most impactful transformations. They are not just the product of skill or effort, but of alignment with a higher source of wisdom that has no limits. Think about it. History's most game-changing advances often appear in clusters, as if the collective mind of humanity was suddenly ready for a new chapter. It's like a curtain lifting, revealing possibilities that were always there, waiting for us to see them. And when this happens, it's not just technology that changes, it's the human story. The way we connect, create, and even perceive life takes on a new form. But here lies the deeper point. Progress is never meant to pull us further from the divine. Its purpose is to bring us closer to the understanding that all intelligence flows from the same infinite source. The arrival of new energies in the world, whether they are technological, social, or even personal, is not an accident. They are part of a divine plan designed to expand the potential of human life. Yet these energies are neutral at their core. In the hands of wisdom, they uplift, heal, and connect. In the absence of that wisdom, they can be twisted into tools that harm or divide. This is why the mindset we bring to progress matters as much as progress itself. The transformation we're talking about here is not just about what we can build or discover, but about the consciousness we carry while using it. There's a behind-the-scenes reality at play. Each time a new energy or possibility emerges, it acts like a mirror, reflecting back the current state of human awareness. If our collective vision is rooted in fear, scarcity, or control, that's the form it will take in the world. But if it's grounded in trust, cooperation, and the recognition of our shared divine origin, that same energy becomes a force for unity and restoration. This is the silent decision point humanity faces again and again, one that shapes not only the visible structures around us but the invisible foundation of our shared future. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding the spiritual responsibility that comes with every new possibility is the key to turning progress into something that truly serves the soul's journey. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." When you begin each day by affirming that all that is new reveals more of God's good, something subtle but powerful shifts inside you. It's not just about repeating a phrase, it's about allowing that truth to become the lens through which you interpret everything that unfolds. This mindset turns the unexpected into an ally. Change stops feeling like a threat and starts to feel like a divine unveiling, a behind-the-scenes movement in which every detail, even those you don't yet understand, is part of a greater plan working in your favor. With this awareness, gratitude becomes natural, almost effortless, because you start recognizing blessings before they're fully visible. Faith doesn't need proof. It creates the space for proof to appear. And when we look deeper, we realize that the outer discoveries we make, the so-called breakthroughs in science, energy, and technology, are often mirrors reflecting an inner awakening. The atom, for instance, isn't just a scientific curiosity. It's a living parable. In its tiny, seemingly insignificant size lies a force so immense it can reshape the world. That's exactly how the human soul works. Within what appears ordinary on the outside is a reservoir of power, creativity, and divine potential that, when awakened, can transform not only your personal life, but also ripple out to impact countless others. This is the hidden truth most people miss. The world's greatest energies, whether in the laboratory or in the spirit, are not created. They are revealed. They were always there, waiting for consciousness to catch up, waiting for us to be ready to handle them wisely. And the readiness doesn't come from technical skill alone. It comes from the maturity of the soul, from the alignment of thought, intention, and action with a higher order. Without that alignment, even the most extraordinary discovery can become dangerous in human hands. With it, the same discovery can become a force for healing, restoration, and elevation. Every major leap forward in human understanding carries a quiet invitation to see in the outer form a reflection of an inner reality. The atom tells us about the soul's vast reserves of creative force. Solar energy speaks of the ever-present light of truth that can illuminate the darkest corners of life. The interconnected web of global communication mirrors the spiritual truth that we are all already linked in a greater unity. These parallels are not poetic coincidences. They are signs that the same intelligence shaping the cosmos is also shaping your inner journey. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you truly grasp the connection between outer discoveries and inner transformation, the way you engage with the world and with your own potential will never be the same. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." Real protection is never about the walls we build, the weapons we accumulate, or the strategies we design to outsmart potential threats. Those measures may give the illusion of safety for a while, but they can't touch the root of fear, because fear lives in the mind and heart, not in the physical world. True safety, the kind that dissolves anxiety before it can take form, comes from a deeper source. It's born when you awaken the Christ within, when you recognize that divine presence as the unshakable center of your being. In that place, no chaos can intrude, because you're anchored in something beyond the reach of circumstances. This is a shift in mindset so profound that it changes the way you interpret everything you see around you. When you live from this awareness, peace stops being a far-off ideal and becomes your natural state. It's not dependent on perfect conditions, on everyone agreeing, or on the absence of conflict in the world. Instead, it radiates outward from within you, influencing your environment in ways that might never be measured in headlines but can be felt in the atmosphere of every room you enter. This is the quiet power of spiritual alignment. It works invisibly, yet its effects are unmistakable. And when this inner foundation is established, you begin to realize how much impact your own consciousness has beyond the boundaries of your individual life. This is where visualization becomes more than just a mental exercise. It becomes a spiritual act. When you deliberately picture the earth bathed in the light of Christ, you're not escaping reality, you're reshaping it at its most fundamental level. That light is not symbolic. It is the spiritual essence that heals, restores, and brings harmony wherever it flows. In this practice, you become a channel for something greater than yourself. You imagine that radiant presence enveloping continents, filling oceans, touching every city, every home, every person. You see barriers dissolve, misunderstandings soften, and wounds, both visible and invisible, begin to mend. And even though the outer world may not change in an instant, something shifts in the collective field of thought. Your vision becomes part of a larger movement of consciousness, a subtle yet unstoppable current carrying the world toward greater wholeness. This is not passive dreaming, it's active participation in the spiritual architecture of reality. It's stepping behind the scenes of the visible world to work, where true transformation begins. And once you've touched this level of influence, you can never again believe that your thoughts and intentions are small or insignificant. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand the full reach of your inner vision, you'll see how it can shape not just your life, but the destiny of the world itself. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Spiritual energy is not just a poetic phrase. It is as real as gravity, as tangible as the air you breathe, even if it moves in realms your eyes cannot see. When it flows through you unhindered, it changes more than just your mood or your thoughts. It can shift the very atmosphere around you. Rooms feel lighter, tensions ease, conversations take a gentler turn, and even people who have no idea why may suddenly feel calmer, more open, more willing to listen. This is the subtle power that operates quietly, yet leaves undeniable traces, a force that doesn't need to announce itself because its impact speaks for it. The truth is, most people unknowingly block this current. They let fear, resentment, and constant mental noise tangle the flow, as if placing debris in a clear stream. But when you decide, truly decide, to clear the channel, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel yourself as more than an individual mind trying to figure life out. You sense a larger intelligence moving through you, guiding thoughts, aligning circumstances, and even opening doors you didn't know existed. And this is where scientific prayer comes into play. Not as a ritual of pleading or bargaining, but as a conscious adjustment of your inner frequency. You're not trying to persuade God to act. You're aligning yourself with the reality that He already is. It's like tuning a radio. The broadcast has always been there, but until you match the right wavelength, you can't hear the music. The moment you align, you realize the melody never stopped. It was you who was out of tune. In this state, prayer stops feeling like a task and becomes more like breathing. You're not asking for something far away to be sent to you. You're stepping into what already exists in fullness. The need for strain dissolves because you see that the outcome is not built on your effort alone, but on the unshakable foundation of divine law. And the more you hold to that alignment, the more you notice synchronicities, those seemingly small coincidences that feel like secret confirmations from the universe. They're the behind-the-scenes threads of a larger tapestry being woven through your life, often in ways you could never have scripted. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you grasp how to sustain this alignment, you'll see that it's not only your personal life that transforms, your very presence becomes a living channel for change in the world around you. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." Fear loses its grip the moment you stop treating it like an unshakable truth and start seeing it for what it really is, a passing suggestion, a shadow with no substance unless you feed it. When you name it, you strip away its disguise. Suddenly, it's not an undefined cloud over your life. It's a specific thought you can challenge, reshape, and release. This act alone begins to shift your inner chemistry. The body relaxes, the mind clears, and a quiet certainty begins to emerge, one that doesn't come from forcing courage, but from remembering you were never meant to live under fear's command. The practice of reversing fear is more than just positive thinking. It's a deliberate rewriting of the inner script. You take the exact words fear uses against you, and you flip them into the language of truth. If the thought says, "I will fail," you replace it with, "I walk in success," guided by divine intelligence. If it says, "I'm not enough," you affirm, "I am complete, equipped, and aligned with my purpose." And you don't just say it, you feel it, as if the affirmation were already etched into the core of your being. This is where transformation happens quietly but powerfully. By repeating truth with conviction, you're not trying to convince yourself of something false. You're reminding yourself of what has always been real, but temporarily forgotten. Fear fades because it cannot coexist with sustained truth in the same mental space. It's like light entering a dark room. The darkness doesn't fight back, it simply disappears. And when you release fear, you're not just removing a problem, you're creating space for something far greater to take root. That space becomes fertile ground for inspiration, for clear decisions, for the kind of mindset that attracts the very outcomes fear once told you were impossible. You begin to notice that life responds differently to you. People speak to you differently. Opportunities seem to find you instead of you chasing them. It's as if reality itself adjusts to match your renewed inner state. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand the hidden mechanism behind this exchange, how fear's departure makes room for divine alignment, you'll see why releasing it is not just a personal victory, but a turning point in your entire journey. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me," imagination, when, purified by truth, stops being an idle escape and becomes a precise instrument, a kind of spiritual blueprint that life itself begins to follow. Most people use imagination unconsciously, replaying fears, worries, and limiting scenarios without realizing they are rehearsing their own obstacles. But when you intentionally choose the images you dwell on, you're engaging in a hidden creative act that starts shaping reality before a single outward step is taken. It's as if the soul whispers its vision into the unseen, and the unseen quietly rearranges the visible to match. This is where the anticipated walk takes on its quiet but extraordinary power. The moment you allow yourself to fully see, hear, and feel the day you wish to experience, even before it begins, you're sending out a clear and consistent signal. The mind, the emotions, and the spirit align around that picture, and your actions, without strain, begin to move in harmony with it. You no longer stumble into the day as a passive participant. You enter as a conscious co-creator, walking on ground you have already claimed inwardly. The beauty of this practice is that it works on more than just the details you visualize. It sets a vibrational tone that permeates everything, even the things you could not have predicted. A planned meeting runs smoother than expected. A chance encounter leads to an opportunity. An old problem suddenly resolves in a way that feels effortless. It's not about controlling life, it's about synchronizing with its highest flow. When you do this, life stops feeling like a series of random events and begins to resemble a carefully composed melody where every note arrives right on time. Behind the scenes of this process is a spiritual law as precise as any law of physics. Attention energizes form. The more vividly and consistently you imagine a harmonious outcome, the more substance you give it in the unseen, and the faster it begins to appear in the scene. It's the opposite of wishful thinking. This is disciplined, intentional imagining, rooted in the certainty that divine order is already active and simply awaiting your agreement. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand the subtle connection between what you rehearse in the silence of your mind and what later unfolds in the visible world, you'll never again take your inner visions lightly. Put down, "I'm also on this path." Perfect love is not a sentimental emotion. It's a force, a frequency, a transformative lens that changes how you move through the world. When you consciously choose to see others as extensions of your own being, the walls of defense and comparison begin to fall. The subtle tension you carry in social situations, the guarded words, the quick assumptions, the quiet measuring of who stands where, melts into a genuine openness. Judgment loses its grip because you are no longer looking for differences to define you, but for unity to empower you. In this state, your presence itself becomes a silent blessing, and people feel it even if they can't explain why. It's a quiet revolution of the heart that can shift the energy in a room faster than any speech. When you live from that space, declaring a golden future isn't just a hopeful phrase, it's an act of spiritual authority. To consecrate the next decade of your life to God's good is to draw a bold line in the unseen, marking this as the season where your choices, thoughts, and actions align fully with your highest calling. It's not about waiting for ideal circumstances to appear. It's about becoming the kind of person who creates them. The moment you make that inner vow, your mindset shifts from passively reacting to actively shaping. Every decision becomes a seed in the soil of your destiny. Every step a deliberate move toward the life you've envisioned in spirit. This is where the deeper, behind-the-scenes work begins, the kind that happens in your thoughts before it shows in your results. You start to measure progress not just by visible achievements, but by the growing consistency between your inner state and your outer expression. You notice how quickly fear is replaced with faith, how naturally gratitude rises even in challenge, how powerfully small daily acts reinforce the larger vision. It's a transformation that unfolds quietly at first, but its impact compounds until the shift is undeniable. The golden future you declare today is not an abstract dream, it's a living blueprint. Each time you affirm it with conviction and align your actions accordingly, you step further into its reality. And as that alignment deepens, you'll find that the life you once hoped for is already meeting you halfway. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there's a hidden layer to this kind of commitment that turns a simple declaration into a spiritual catalyst for everything that follows. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." If you've stayed with me until now, you already know how much these ideas can shift the way we see and live life. That's why I'd love for you to subscribe, so we can keep walking this path together and diving into content that feeds the mind and strengthens the spirit. And if you made it all the way here, let me know in the comments by writing, "I'm with you until the end." It'll be our quiet way of knowing we're on the same journey. If this resonated with you, give it a like. It helps keep this energy moving and lets me know the message is reaching the right hearts. There's a video right here that complements this topic beautifully. Click and continue with me over there.